They were greasy, comforting, and always a little squished by noon. A slice of leftover meatloaf, a thermos of sweet tea, a ding-dong for dessert. They weren't just lunch. They were love, wrapped in foil. Now they're gone. But the craving never left. Bread and drippings. When every drop of food mattered, nothing was wasted, not even grease. Bread and drippings, a Depression-era lunch staple, was born from necessity and hardened into tradition. After cooking bacon, sausage, or roast meat, families would save the leftover fat, called drippings, in a jar. This precious grease was then spread over stale bread, creating a salty, savory sandwich that delivered warmth and calories. It was simple, but deeply satisfying. Some families added a sprinkle of salt or even sugar for variation. Others used drippings to make a quick gravy poured over the bread. It became a comfort food, reminding them of childhood kitchens, grandparents' habits, and the era when nothing went to waste. Rich in flavor and heavy in nostalgia, the bread and dripping sandwich is a forgotten symbol of working-class resilience. It teaches us how a scrap can become a staple, and how love often tasted like whatever was left in the pan.
Fish cake sandwich.
Fish cake sandwiches were a delicious way to stretch leftovers and make use of inexpensive canned or salted fish. Typically made from flaked cod, haddock, or even leftover fried fish, the fish was mashed with breadcrumbs, egg, and seasoning, then shaped into patties and pan-fried until golden. Crispy on the outside, soft and savory inside, the fish cake was then nestled between slices of bread or a soft roll. Some families added a dab of tartar sauce or slaw for moisture and crunch. Popular in coastal towns and urban immigrant communities, these sandwiches provided a filling lunch without breaking the bank. During wartime rationing and the Depression, fish cakes became popular because they didn't rely on fresh cuts or large quantities of meat. Parents liked them because they were affordable. Kids liked them because they were crispy and flavorful. Peanut butter and molasses sandwich. In times when sugar was rationed or too expensive, molasses became a pantry savior. And when paired with peanut butter, it turned into a powerhouse lunch. The peanut butter and molasses sandwich was sticky, sweet, and packed with energy, perfect for kids and laborers alike. Thick slices of homemade or store-bought bread held the spread, which didn't need refrigeration and kept well through the day. The molasses added deep, rich flavor and iron, while the peanut butter brought protein and fat to keep hunger at bay. This sandwich was often enjoyed with a glass of milk or a piece of fruit if available, and became a regular in school lunch pails across rural America. While simple, it reflected the era's creativity, turning humble staples into something memorable. Even today, the combination still evokes a strong sense of nostalgia. It wasn't just filling. It was fuel for growing bodies and hardworking hands, sweetened by the resilience of those who knew how to stretch every spoonful. Bread and milk bowl. In the heart of the Great Depression, few meals captured the spirit of making do quite like the bread and milk bowl. Simple, comforting, and affordable, it became a staple for countless American families when resources were thin. The concept was basic: torn pieces of stale bread placed in a bowl, covered with cold or warm milk, and occasionally sweetened with a bit of sugar or a dash of cinnamon when available. Though modest in ingredients, this dish offered warmth and satiety to those who had little else. Children were especially fond of it, finding the mushy texture and mild sweetness soothing during uncertain times. Often served as a quick lunch or supper, the bread and milk bowl was proof that a meal didn't need meat or luxury to be meaningful. It reflected a time when love and creativity turned scarcity into sustenance. Today, it stands as a quiet reminder of the resilience of past generations and the ability to find comfort in the most humble of bowls. Ham salad sandwich. Ham salad sandwiches were a Depression-era favorite that blended economy with flavor. When whole hams were a luxury, families used every last scrap, trimmings, shavings, and bone pickings, chopped finely and mixed with mayonnaise, mustard, and pickles to create a spreadable, flavorful salad. Sometimes a bit of boiled egg or celery was added if available, stretching the mixture even further. The beauty of ham salad was in its adaptability. No two families made it exactly the same, but everyone had their version. The texture was soft enough for kids, but packed with flavor adults loved. In many communities, passing down a secret ham salad recipe became a tradition. Today, it might seem retro, even quaint, but it was once a proud symbol of frugal creativity. A scoop of leftovers, a spoon of mayo, and a touch of spice. And suddenly, a sandwich worthy of remembrance.
Mayonnaise and banana sandwich?
It sounds like an odd pairing, but the mayonnaise and banana sandwich was a Southern staple for decades. Born from frugality and a bit of culinary curiosity, this sweet and savory combo became popular during the Depression when ingredients were limited, but calories were necessary. Sliced ripe bananas, laid over white bread with a thin layer of mayo, offered a surprising balance. The creaminess of the mayonnaise cut the sweetness of the banana, creating something richer and more filling than either on its own. Some added sugar or honey for dessert-like flair. Others ate it plain as an everyday lunch. This sandwich provided potassium, fats, and carbs, a cheap, energy-packed meal. Elvis Presley famously added peanut butter to his, turning it into a cult classic. Today, the idea might spark raised eyebrows, but for many, it brings back memories of childhood kitchens and packed school lunches. It's a sandwich that speaks to Southern thrift and taste, unexpected, enduring, and distinctly American.
Fried egg and onion sandwich.
The fried egg and onion sandwich was born in working-class kitchens, where simplicity and sustenance were key. A couple of eggs, a sliced onion, and 2 slices of bread were all you needed to create a hot, filling lunch. The onions were often sliced thin and fried until golden and fragrant, sometimes caramelized slowly in bacon fat or lard. Then came the eggs, fried sunny side up or over hard, depending on taste and necessity. The combination of savory onions and rich, runny yolks made for a deeply satisfying flavor. During the Depression, this sandwich was a go-to for families who couldn't afford meat but still needed protein and warmth. Many factory and mill workers carried them in wax paper-wrapped lunch pails. Some added a sprinkle of pepper, others topped it with a slice of tomato or cheese if it was available. Cheese and apple sandwich. A lesser-known Depression-era pairing, the cheese and apple sandwich brought together savory and sweet in a way that was both nourishing and surprisingly elegant. Made with slices of sharp cheddar and thin apple wedges, usually from backyard trees, this sandwich was layered on homemade or store-bought bread and served cold. The tart crispness of the apple played perfectly against the salty richness of the cheese. For many, this was a school lunch staple or a midday farm snack, easily packed and requiring no heating. In some households, a bit of mustard was added for zing, while others preferred it plain and honest. This sandwich was about balance: protein from the cheese, fiber and freshness from the apple, and heartiness from the bread. Though it may sound unusual today, the cheese and apple sandwich remains a quiet tribute to Depression-era inventiveness. It proves that simplicity can be flavorful, and that creative pairings were often born out of necessity rather than trend. Peanut butter and pickle sandwich. At first bite, this sandwich might sound like an accident, but during the Great Depression, it became a lunchtime revelation. The sharp tang of pickles paired with creamy peanut butter wasn't just unusual, it was genius. The acidity of the pickles cut through the richness of the peanut butter, creating a strangely addictive contrast. Dill pickles were the most common choice, sliced thin to stretch farther, though some families used sweet pickles if they were home canned. This combination didn't require refrigeration and packed protein, fat, salt, and fiber into every bite. Kids either loved it or hated it, but either way, it showed up in lunch pails across rural America. It was quick, cheap, and satisfying. Today, it's remembered as one of those weird but wonderful combinations that proved flavor didn't need to be fancy. For many, it's a nostalgic throwback to childhood, to frugality, and to the odd comfort of finding joy in the unexpected. Tuna and peas on toast. Canned tuna was a pantry hero in Depression-era homes, and pairing it with canned peas over toast created a frugal yet filling meal. Tuna and peas on toast might not sound fancy, but for many working families, it was a go-to lunch or light dinner. The dish involved creating a quick white sauce, made from flour, butter, and milk or water, then folding in tuna and peas before spooning it over slices of toast. It was warm, creamy, and full of protein and fiber. The toast added crunch, while the sauce provided comfort. Children liked the mild, soft texture, and parents appreciated the low cost and high yield. Sometimes grated cheese or chopped onions were added if available, but the basic version remained a symbol of practicality and warmth. Today, it's a forgotten comfort food, easy, humble, and full of history. It reminds us that even canned goods can create something nourishing when combined with care. Potted meat on crackers. In households where lunch needed to be fast, filling, and frugal, potted meat on crackers was a go-to option. Canned potted meat, often a blend of pork or beef and spices, was cheap, shelf-stable, and required no cooking. Spread over saltine crackers or even stale bread, it made for a convenient and protein-rich snack or meal. It wasn't about fine dining, it was about function. During the Great Depression and into the 1940s and 50s, potted meat featured prominently in lunch pails carried to factories, farms, and schools. Sometimes, families would dress it up with a dab of mustard or a slice of pickle, but often it was eaten plain. It embodied the era's mantra: use what you have and waste nothing. Today, potted meat is often overlooked or associated with poverty, but it remains a powerful symbol of resilience, proving that even the humblest ingredients can offer sustenance when needed most. Pork and beans with toast. Pork and beans with toast was a warm and filling lunch that could feed many with minimal cost. The dish combined canned pork and beans, usually in a sweet tomato sauce, with toasted slices of bread to soak it all up. It was quick to prepare, relied on shelf-stable ingredients, and offered both protein and carbohydrates. During the Depression and war years, this was a common lunch for children, workers, and even soldiers. Some families added chopped onion or a splash of vinegar for extra flavor. Others served it as is, letting the beans speak for themselves. The toast added crunch and bulk, turning what might have been a side dish into a full meal. Today, this humble pairing remains a comfort food for many, especially in rural households or among those who grew up on it. Pork and beans with toast is simple, honest, and filling. The kind of lunch that proves you don't need a full pantry to make something truly satisfying. Egg salad with pickle juice. Egg salad was already a Depression-era favorite, but adding a splash of pickle juice turned it into something tangy, bold, and unforgettable. Families who couldn't afford fancy condiments stretched flavor by using the brine from homemade pickles, something nearly every household had on hand. Hard-boiled eggs were mashed and mixed with a bit of mayonnaise or mustard if available. The result was creamy, zesty, and just a little sweet. Some folks added chopped pickles directly to the mix. Served on sliced bread, biscuits, or even leftover cornbread, this egg salad packed a flavorful punch without requiring many ingredients. It symbolized a mindset of zero waste. Everything in the kitchen had potential, even the liquid left behind. This version of egg salad reminded families that with a bit of creativity, even the most basic lunch could feel like a treat. It was smart, satisfying, and utterly timeless.
Ketchup sandwich.
When the cupboards were bare and the fridge nearly empty, many families turned to the ketchup sandwich, a Depression-era last resort that became oddly beloved. It was as simple as it sounds: 2 slices of bread and a generous squirt of ketchup. For children, it was a treat that felt vaguely like pizza or spaghetti. For adults, it was about filling the belly without breaking the budget. Sometimes sugar was added to sweeten it into a pseudo-dessert. Other times, it was toasted for texture. Ketchup provided more than just tomato flavor. It gave a hint of acidity, salt, and even a bit of vitamin C. During the 1930s, many school cafeterias even served these sandwiches as part of lunch. Though they weren't fancy, they were dependable. In a world where every slice of bread counted and every spoonful of sauce was stretched, the ketchup sandwich was a reminder of making something from nothing. It was childhood comfort for some, and an emblem of survival for others. Simple, strange, but unforgettable. Bologna and mustard sandwich. This humble sandwich became a lunchtime classic during the Great Depression and well into the post-war years. Bologna, cheap, processed, and salty, was the meat of the working class. A single slice could stretch across a piece of white bread, giving the illusion of abundance when meat was scarce. Paired with a smear of sharp yellow mustard, it delivered just enough flavor to feel like a real meal. Some families fried the bologna until the edges curled, adding a crispy texture and richer flavor. Others ate it cold, straight from the package, with whatever bread was on hand. There were no side dishes, no extras, just lunch, quick and cheap. For millions of school kids and factory workers, this sandwich was the reliable meal that filled a lunch pail and a stomach alike. Today it might seem too plain, too processed, but back then, it meant consistency, comfort, and calories. It was more than a sandwich. It was the taste of resilience, dressed in mustard and wrapped in wax paper. Onion sandwich. Raw onion between two slices of bread might sound like punishment today, but for Depression-era families, it was a quick, punchy lunch with surprising benefits. Onions were cheap, available year-round, and full of nutrients. A paper-thin slice between soft bread offered crunch, sharpness, and even a bit of heat. Sometimes butter or lard was spread first to mellow the intensity. Others added vinegar, salt, or pepper. This sandwich became popular among coal miners and factory workers, not only because it was affordable, but because the strong onion scent kept coworkers from borrowing your lunch. It was food with built-in protection. It was also surprisingly energizing, offering carbohydrates from the bread and immune-boosting compounds from the onion. While kids often wrinkled their noses, adults appreciated its no-nonsense simplicity. For many, it was a daily staple, especially in immigrant communities where raw onions were a familiar taste. Today, the onion sandwich sits in obscurity, but back then, it was lunch with bite, pride, and purpose. Rice and raisins. Rice and raisins may sound modest, but for many families, it was a lunchtime lifesaver. During the Great Depression and in frugal households for decades after, this dish turned pantry staples into something nourishing and even sweet. White rice was cooked simply, just water and salt, until soft and fluffy. A handful of raisins would be stirred in, swelling with warmth and releasing their natural sugars. Some cooks added a dash of cinnamon or nutmeg. Others used a splash of milk to create a creamier version. On special days, a sprinkle of sugar or a drizzle of syrup made it feel like a dessert. It could be eaten warm or cold, and it traveled well in lunchboxes. Children often took it to school, and adults brought it to factories and fields. It was cheap, filling, and gave a needed energy boost for the rest of the day. Rice and raisins proves that even in lean times, a little sweetness could go a long way, and that comfort doesn't always come from complexity, but from care and creativity in the kitchen.
Cornbread and beans.
Cornbread and beans is the kind of lunch that reminds us how something simple can be incredibly satisfying. This humble pairing was a staple across the South and Midwest during tough times, from the Great Depression to hard-working farming days. Dried beans, usually pinto, navy, or Great Northern, were soaked. Cornbread, made from coarse cornmeal, was baked in cast iron for a golden crust and soft interior. Together, they made a meal that was cheap, filling, and full of tradition. Beans offered protein and fiber, while the cornbread soaked up every last drop of broth. Some added hot sauce or vinegar for a punch of flavor. Others crumbled the cornbread right into the beans. This meal wasn't just about stretching a dollar. It was about feeding families with warmth and love. Today, cornbread and beans still brings comfort to the table, proving that food doesn't have to be fancy to be deeply satisfying. It's a dish that nourishes both body and soul. Dandelion salad with bacon dressing. During the spring months of hard times, dandelion salad with bacon dressing became both a culinary tradition and an act of survival. Families foraged fresh dandelion greens from yards and open fields, transforming what many consider a weed into a nutritious meal. The greens were bitter but vibrant, full of vitamins and a sign that winter had passed. The key to taming that bitterness was the warm bacon dressing, rendered bacon fat, vinegar, sugar, and sometimes a bit of onion. Poured hot over the greens, the dressing slightly wilted them, softening the texture and blending the earthy flavor with rich, smoky sweetness. In many rural communities, this dish appeared at church picnics, on farmhouse tables, and in recipe booklets passed between neighbors. It was a celebration of spring's return and a reminder of how the land could provide. Dandelion salad was more than a lunch. It was a fresh start, a signal of self-reliance, and a legacy of making the most of what grows wild.
Mock chicken sandwich.
The mock chicken sandwich is one of the cleverest Depression-era deceptions. No poultry in sight, yet remarkably satisfying. Most versions used ground bologna or another cheap processed meat, blended with breadcrumbs, hard-boiled eggs, and a bit of mayonnaise to mimic the texture and flavor of actual chicken salad. Sometimes celery seed, mustard, or chopped onion were added to enhance the illusion. The result was a spreadable, protein-rich filling that could stretch over multiple sandwiches. In cafeterias and factory lunchrooms, this was a beloved favorite. Affordable, easy to make in bulk, and surprisingly tasty. Children didn't always know it wasn't real chicken. Many adults didn't care. It was about feeding the family and doing so with creativity and grace. For households where poultry was a luxury saved for Sundays, the mock chicken sandwich became the stand-in with pride.
Potato and onion pie.
Potato and onion pie was the ultimate Depression-era dish. Affordable, adaptable, and deeply comforting. Made from thinly sliced potatoes layered with onions in a simple flour and water crust, this pie turned two of the cheapest ingredients into a rich, satisfying lunch. The layers were seasoned with salt, pepper, and sometimes a dab of lard or bacon grease, then baked until golden and bubbling. As it cooked, the onions softened and sweetened, mingling with the starch of the potatoes to create a dish that was both hearty and tender. It didn't need cheese or cream, just time and heat. Served hot or cold, it stretched across multiple meals and could be paired with whatever greens or scraps were available. Many families saw it as more than food. It was tradition. Mothers passed it down to daughters. Kids remembered it fondly. Liverwurst and onion sandwich. Back in the day, the liverwurst and onion sandwich was a no-nonsense lunch that packed a punch. Liverwurst, smooth, fatty, and iron-rich, was affordable and easy to spread or slice. Paired with raw onions, sliced paper thin, it offered a sharp, tangy bite that cut through the richness. Some families soaked the onions in cold water to mellow the flavor, while others leaned into the intensity. Served on plain white bread or rye, this sandwich didn't need fancy extras. A swipe of mustard or a pat of butter might be added, but the stars were always the meat and the onion. It was the kind of lunch you'd find in a steelworker's pail or packed by a thrifty farm wife. Nutritious, heavy, and filling, it kept hunger at bay through long shifts and hard days. Though its popularity faded with time, many remember it fondly as a taste of resilience and working-class pride. Today, it's a bold throwback that tells a story, not just of flavor, but of survival, grit, and the meals that got our grandparents through the hardest of times.
Lard on bread.
At first glance, it's shocking. A sandwich made of nothing more than lard and bread. But during the Great Depression, this simple meal was a lifeline. Lard, rendered pork fat, was often all families had when butter, meat, and cheese were unaffordable. A thin spread over a slice of bread provided calories, fat, and just enough flavor to keep going. Sometimes a sprinkle of salt or sugar was added, depending on whether you wanted savory or sweet. In Appalachian homes and rural farms, this was a common lunch, especially for children or laborers needing quick energy. It wasn't glamorous or gourmet, but it was filling, and it spoke to the waste-nothing attitude of the time. Every part of the pig was used, and lard was saved in jars like gold. For those who grew up with it, lard sandwiches still bring back memories of simpler, tougher times, of grandmothers spreading it with care and making the most of very little. Today, it's a forgotten bite of history, hearty, humble, and rooted in survival. Butter and sugar sandwich. The butter and sugar sandwich was a Depression-era sweet treat that doubled as a simple lunch when other ingredients were scarce. Made by spreading softened butter on slices of white bread and sprinkling it with granulated sugar, it provided quick calories and a bit of indulgence in hard times. Some families toasted the bread first for crunch, while others enjoyed it soft and chewy. A pinch of cinnamon was occasionally added for flavor if it was on hand. This sandwich was especially popular with children, who saw it as a rare dessert-like lunch. It also appeared in lunchboxes and at kitchen tables when fresh fruit or jam was too expensive to buy. Though it lacks the nutrients of more balanced meals, the butter and sugar sandwich endures in memory as a symbol of how families found ways to make do and even delight, using only what was available. It's a sweet slice of history, still remembered fondly by those who grew up with its simple charm. Cold fried chicken sandwich. The cold fried chicken sandwich was a beloved treat born out of weekend leftovers and Southern kitchen traditions. After Sunday dinner, leftover fried chicken was carefully stored in the icebox, its crispy skin firming up and the spices mellowing overnight. Come Monday, that chicken was pulled apart, sometimes with the bone, sometimes shredded, and layered between slices of white bread. Some families added mayonnaise or a swipe of mustard, while others left it plain, letting the flavor of the cold, seasoned crust speak for itself. For workers heading to factories or fields, this sandwich was portable, filling, and flavorful. The contrast of cool chicken and soft bread made for a satisfying texture, especially in warm weather. In rural towns, mothers would wrap them in wax paper for school lunches or picnics. It represented economy, yes, but also care and continuity. Each bite offered a taste of yesterday's feast and a reminder that even cold, food could be warm with memory. Scrapple sandwich. The scrapple sandwich was a Depression-era staple, especially in the mid-Atlantic states. Scrapple, made from pork scraps, cornmeal, and spices, was an efficient way to use every part of the pig. It was cooked down into a loaf, chilled, and then sliced and pan-fried until golden and crisp on the outside. These slices were placed between two pieces of bread, sometimes with mustard or apple butter for flavor. It was hearty, flavorful, and packed with energy, ideal for laborers and farmers. Families often served scrapple sandwiches for breakfast, lunch, or supper, depending on what was available. What made scrapple special was its roots in resourcefulness, turning odds and ends into a satisfying, protein-rich meal. While it may not have been glamorous, it was reliable, economical, and deeply tied to regional food culture. Even today, you'll find scrapple sandwiches in diners across Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland, a savory nod to the frugality and flavor of the past. Hard-boiled egg sandwich. The hard-boiled egg sandwich was a Depression-era hero, cheap, portable, and packed with protein. Eggs were more accessible than meat, and boiling them was an efficient way to stretch a dozen over several meals. Sliced or mashed eggs were laid between slices of bread, often with a touch of mayonnaise, mustard, or salt and pepper. Some families added chopped pickles or onions for extra flavor, while others kept it plain. It was a common sight in lunch pails heading to schools, fields, or factories. Easy to prepare in advance and requiring no refrigeration for a few hours, it fit the fast-paced but frugal life of many working-class families. The hard-boiled egg sandwich didn't rely on abundance. It relied on practicality. Yet it delivered satisfaction and nourishment time and again. Even today, it remains a reliable standby, showing that timeless meals are often the ones that began with the humblest intentions and ingredients. Tomato sandwich with sugar. Before tomatoes were year-round supermarket staples, they were summer treasures. And one of the strangest but most beloved ways to enjoy them? A tomato sandwich sprinkled with sugar. This simple, sweet, salty lunch had just 3 parts: thick slices of fresh garden tomato, white bread, and a dusting of granulated sugar. Sometimes butter was added to the bread, but more often it was bare. The sugar drew out the tomato's juices, creating a sweet, tangy syrup that soaked into the bread. In rural communities, this was a seasonal favorite, cheap, easy, and bright. For children, it was practically a dessert. For adults, it was nostalgia between 2 slices. During the Depression, when sweet fruit was rare and store-bought treats even rarer, the sugar tomato sandwich offered both refreshment and indulgence.
Fried bologna sandwich.
Crisp-edged, sizzling, and unmistakably nostalgic. The fried bologna sandwich is an American classic that rose from budget necessity to comfort food royalty. Cheap, widely available, and easy to prepare, bologna was dubbed poor man's steak during the Depression and post-war years. Families would slice bologna thin, score the edges to prevent curling, then toss it into a hot skillet until the meat browned and puffed. The caramelization added depth and texture, transforming an ordinary cold cut into something savory and satisfying. A warm slice of fried bologna was then laid between two slices of bread, often with yellow mustard, a slice of processed cheese, or even a fried egg for extra substance. It was a favorite of lunch counters and home kitchens alike, especially in the South and Midwest. Cucumber and vinegar sandwich. When summer heat arrived and meat was too expensive to spare, the cucumber and vinegar sandwich offered a cool and crisp alternative. Made from thinly sliced garden cucumbers soaked in vinegar, salt, and sometimes a pinch of sugar, the cucumbers were then layered between slices of soft white bread. The vinegar added tang, the cucumbers brought crunch, and the bread softened just enough to make each bite a refreshing contrast of texture and taste. This sandwich, often prepared by grandmothers and passed down through generations, was a seasonal tradition in many parts of rural America. It spoke of kitchen gardens, long afternoons, and the simple pleasure of a sandwich that tasted like summer itself. Often eaten during midday breaks from farm work or at picnic tables under shade trees, the cucumber and vinegar sandwich was more than a meal. It was an experience. Today, it remains a nostalgic nod to a time when ingredients were fresh, humble, and deeply appreciated. Potato soup with crackers. Potato soup with crackers was a Depression-era classic that turned humble ingredients into something warm and comforting. Potatoes were cheap, easy to store, and versatile. Families peeled and chopped them, simmered them in water or broth, and added onions, salt, maybe a splash of milk or a pat of butter if it was on hand. The result? A creamy, starchy soup that filled bowls and hearts. Crackers were often served on the side or crumbled right on top. Saltines, soda crackers, whatever was available. They added crunch, texture, and a little extra bulk to stretch the meal even further. This wasn't just a dish for poor times, it became a ritual. Mothers made it for lunch on cold days, churches served it at community dinners, and kids grew up seeing it as a sign of care and comfort. Some recipes added bacon fat or herbs, but at its core, it was about making something from almost nothing. Even today, when you bite into a warm bowl of potato soup with crackers, it brings back a taste of thrift, tradition, and love. Deviled ham sandwich. Deviled ham sandwiches were a pantry staple in mid-20th century American households. Made from finely ground ham blended with mayonnaise, mustard, vinegar, and a dash of cayenne or hot sauce, this spicy spread was both economical and flavorful. The term deviled referred to the fiery kick, which livened up otherwise bland lunches. Packed into soft white bread or spooned over crackers, deviled ham offered a quick, protein-rich meal that required no cooking. During the Depression and post-war years, canned deviled ham, like the famous Underwood brand, was a shelf-stable hero, beloved for its long life and punchy taste. Factory workers, school kids, and homemakers all depended on it. Some variations included relish, chopped pickles, or hard-boiled egg to stretch it further. Fried liver sandwich. For families that practiced whole animal eating, fried liver sandwiches were a regular and nutritious lunch option. Liver, especially beef or chicken, was cheap and packed with iron and vitamins. Sliced, dredged in flour, and fried until browned, it was then layered on bread, sometimes with onions, sometimes with a slather of mustard. The texture was rich and slightly chewy, and the flavor bold. Acquired for some, comforting for others. This sandwich was especially common in rural communities and immigrant households, where thriftiness and nutrition went hand in hand. In some homes, leftover liver from dinner became the next day's sandwich filling, minimizing waste and maximizing value. Though it may be less common today, the fried liver sandwich still holds a nostalgic place for many. It's a reminder of a time when every part of an animal was used and honored, and when lunch was less about luxury and more about making every bite count. Spam and pineapple sandwich. Spam and pineapple might sound like a quirky pizza topping today, but it once made for a lunch that was both practical and festive. Born from wartime rations and island influence, this sandwich paired the salty punch of fried spam with the sweet brightness of canned pineapple. The spam, sliced and crisped in a hot skillet, provided the meatiness. The pineapple, either crushed or ringed, brought a tangy counterbalance. Together, they were tucked between slices of white bread, sometimes with a dab of mustard or mayonnaise. This sandwich wasn't just about flavor, it was about making do with pantry staples. Canned goods like spam and pineapple were shelf-stable, cheap, and widely distributed during World War II. For many families, especially in Hawaii and coastal towns, this was a weekly ritual.
Chili and rice.
Chili and rice was the ultimate budget stretcher, a hearty, spicy, and filling lunch that could feed a family on pennies. Ground beef was often the base, though many versions used beans, lentils, or scraps of pork. Canned tomatoes, chili powder, and onions turned a few ingredients into a deeply flavorful stew. Rice was cooked in big batches, cheap and easy to make. A spoonful of chili over a scoop of rice turned into a feast. Families in the 1930s and 40s leaned on this meal when meat was scarce and money even scarcer. Some tossed in vegetables like corn, green peppers, or even leftover potatoes, whatever was available. Kids loved it, adults appreciated its heat and heartiness, and it kept bellies full through long afternoons. It was often cooked in large pots and reheated day after day. Today, chili and rice is still a go-to comfort food in many homes, a dish that bridges the past with the present. It's a memory of frugal times and full plates.
Egg and sardine sandwich.
An unlikely pairing to modern taste buds, the egg and sardine sandwich was once a Depression-era powerhouse of nutrition. With meat scarce and expensive, families turned to shelf-stable proteins like canned sardines and eggs. Hard-boiled eggs were chopped and mashed together with sardines, bones and all, for added calcium and richness. A little vinegar or mustard helped cut the fishiness, and finely chopped onions or pickles added crunch and tang. This hearty mix was then spread generously between slices of bread, creating a meal that was inexpensive, sustaining, and packed with omega-3s, protein, and iron. Immigrant communities, especially from Europe, popularized the recipe in America, bringing with them traditions of preserved fish.
Cold meatloaf sandwich.
Cold meatloaf sandwiches were the definition of next-day delicious. What started as a hearty dinner often reappeared the next day between two slices of bread, making one of the most beloved Depression-era leftovers. Thick slices of chilled meatloaf, sometimes firmed up in the fridge, were perfect for slicing and stacking. Meatloaf was designed to stretch a small amount of meat with fillers like oats, breadcrumbs, or even mashed vegetables. That thrift carried over to the sandwich, which turned one dinner into multiple lunches. Some families even preferred the cold version to the hot one, praising its firm texture and savory flavor. These sandwiches filled lunch pails for factory workers, school children, and farmers alike. They were a reminder of practicality, flavor, and the satisfaction of making food last. In today's world of artisanal sandwiches, the cold meatloaf version remains a humble classic. No frills, just filling and familiar. A bite of yesterday's meatloaf was often tomorrow's comfort. Creamed chipped beef on toast. Creamed chipped beef on toast, often affectionately called SOS by soldiers, was a Depression-era staple that turned a little into a lot. Thin strips of dried beef were sautéed in butter, then bathed in a white sauce made from flour, milk, and pepper. The resulting creamy mixture was spooned generously over slices of toasted white bread, soaking into every edge. It was salty, warm, and filling, perfect for stretching budgets and appetites. This dish found its way into army mess halls and home kitchens alike, prized for its simplicity and satisfaction. Though the dried beef was heavily salted to ensure shelf stability, the milk-based sauce mellowed its punch. For many families, it was a weekly lunch ritual, especially on tight grocery weeks. The toast gave structure, the sauce gave comfort, and together they delivered just enough richness to feel like a real meal. Fried green tomato sandwich. Before tomatoes ripened fully on the vine, resourceful home cooks found genius in the green, specifically in fried green tomatoes. These tart, firm slices were dipped in cornmeal or flour and pan-fried until golden and crisp. But the real magic happened when they were placed between two slices of bread, often with a smear of mayonnaise, or sometimes bacon, for extra indulgence. The fried green tomato sandwich was a Southern staple. The crispy texture and tangy flavor paired wonderfully with soft white bread. Families gathered on porches or under trees, biting into that crackling crust and savoring the zing of green tomatoes. It became a marker of the season, brief, bold, and cherished. Today, It remains a reminder of agricultural ingenuity when the harvest wasn't perfect, but the cooking still was. A testament to turning the in-between into something unforgettable. Chopped olive and cream cheese sandwich. A Depression-era favorite with a flair for the savory, the chopped olive and cream cheese sandwich was a go-to for frugal yet flavorful lunches. The tang of green olives paired with the richness of cream cheese made this spread a unique treat, especially when meat was scarce or out of budget. Housewives would finely chop jarred green olives, sometimes stuffed with pimentos, and blend them into softened cream cheese, creating a salty, tangy filling. Spread between slices of soft white or rye bread. It required no cooking, could be made ahead. The chopped olive sandwich had a certain charm. It was creamy, briny, and packed a punch of flavor that felt luxurious despite its modest ingredients. For many, it was their first introduction to briny foods. It endures today as a nostalgic favorite and a testament to Depression-era inventiveness with flavor and texture. If these famous meals brought back memories you never knew you had, leave a comment. Hit like to honor the flavors of the past, and subscribe for another bite of forgotten food history.